Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Motivational Monday. My name is Kira, and I am your host for our Motivational Monday session in the month that we're currently in, which is Living Your Purpose. So, we have been diving in. And last week we worked with one of our neuroplasticians, Alvaro, talking about how your purpose is wired within and the way that your brain is hardwired for a purpose and what that looks like and how that supports us on our journey, which was a great episode. And today we have Julia here with us to talk about letting go of who you think you should be. Because I feel like we have a lot of narratives. We feel like we're either too far back, or we've wasted time, or we can't do this, or we should have been here, or we should have done that, or because we didn't take that opportunity 5 years ago, we can't take it today. And a lot of that just stops us from seeing who we truly are, what our potential is, and where we can go. So I'm incredibly excited for today's session. I wanted to do a breakdown of purpose just so that we can have a little bit of an understanding as we start having today's conversation. So the definition of purpose, if you're looking at more of like the etymology, which is the origin of the word, per means to set forth beforehand, and it's used in pure, which means without blemish. And pose is to suggest or intend. So purpose in its full deep origin way means the purest intention that we set forth beforehand. And what I found in interviewing our guides is that our purpose is more of a general feeling or a calling, and it's not necessarily this very specific achievement or accolade. And I feel like that ties in really well to this definition of purpose to set forth beyond beforehand with intention in a pure way. If you understand your intention and the purity of what you feel like you're supposed to bring into this world, then doors open up to you, and maybe doors that you didn't even know. So, this can be the how in which you live your life, it can be the why in which you live your life, or maybe it's even the who in which you impact through your lifetime. And it's more of an internal journey than an external quest, which I feel like you'll hear repeated by our guides in their own iterations of these conversations. So, we have Julia here. She is one of our new guides to Motivational Monday. I don't think any of you have ever experienced a Julia session yet, so I'm very excited to bring her on. She is really cool, really amazing. I feel like you're going to love her in this conversation. And a little bit about Julia, she is a mindfulness teacher and coach. She is a certified speaking circles facilitator. She's a writer featured in Chicken Soup for the Soul. Drop 111 in the chat if you know Chicken Soup for the Soul. I remember being in like third grade learning about Chicken Soup for the Soul. So it was a really nice flashback, being able to be like, oh my God, she's a featured writer. That's amazing. And of course, she is one of our certified life guides. And her superpower is helping you find your voice and live your truth, guiding you to build resilience, strength, and purpose on your journey. So, Julia, hello, hello. We are so excited to have you. Thank you for co-hosting today's session with me. And we're just going to dive in. Can you tell us a little bit about your definition of purpose?
Yeah. Okay, first of all, thank you for having me. And I also love the etymology that you laid out because I'm really into etymology. So I learned something new there and I love that. And it's very aligned with my way of thinking about it all. So I have a little more unconventional way of looking at purpose. I think about purpose as just being human, like our purpose for existing on earth. What is our purpose for being alive? It's to experience ourselves existing and experience ourselves as a human, as who we are, born into this world, in this time, in the family we were born into, in the town we were born into, in the body we were born into. It's just to experience ourselves. And so maybe a more broader definition is just to it's our reason for being alive, our reason for existing, to continue to exist, to what drives us to move forward every day, to keep living, to keep uh, trying to, I don't know, move forward and just find, to create the life that we have.
It's so interesting because in interviewing our guides and scheduling all of these conversations, there has always been this common theme throughout the guides of the simplicity of your purpose. It's not necessarily to make $1 million or to become famous, which for some people they might feel that that's their purpose, but just like Julia said, it's the humanness. It's the simplicity of life. So if we're looking at the simplicity, Julia, of what it looks like to be human and to live our purpose, what are some ways that you see that show up for people?
Um, what are ways that this, like the simplicity shows up? I think just even like noticing, like right now, I can see out my window the sun. I live in the Bay Area. It's foggy a lot in the morning, and the sun just popped out, and I can see the sun hitting the lavender that's growing out there and shining through the trees. And so just being like present to that moment is, a big part of it. And just these micro moments of being aware, being present, being here where we are now while we're living our lives, because we can get so into our heads and future trip, or like dwell on the past for better or for worse. And so when we can be right now, this is where our life is happening, is right now in this moment.
It makes me think oftentimes you hear people who end up making lots and lots of money and do really big things with their lives, and they're never happy. And it really is the simplicity of being here, right now, that it's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. And that's the difference as well, is the realization that it takes conscious effort to be here and to appreciate the life that you're living and to not wish for more and to allow yourself to
Yeah.
accept where you're at right now. Because there's a realization that I've had is that I currently, right now, am living the life that previous me prayed and cried for. And if I don't take the time now to appreciate this part of the journey, because it's very easy for me to be like, oh, well, this is where I'm at now and it's where I want to go. And it's like, no, this is where I'm at now. I get to live my prayers. I get to live my dreams. That is an amazing achievement. And it also gives me perspective in the realization that being here now and appreciating this moment is so good. And knowing, like, where do I want to go? I will get there and I don't need to rush it. There's a natural process that
Yes.
unfolds in our heart's calling when we're meant for more. So, Julia, I'm curious, when you're working with people, obviously you do a lot of different layers of work. How do you support those who are looking to come in closer contact with their purpose?
Yeah. So, well, I think you touched on something when you were talking about like you achieve all the things and get all the money, and you're not still happy. And I think our culture really tends to tie purpose with money and job. And I think more like money and job should support the purpose. I mean, and sometimes they are both. Sometimes they're the same thing, and sometimes they're not. And so I like to start with just like really trying to like take the pressure off of people and just let people know like wherever you're at is okay, and there's some reason for why you're where you're at. And we tend to get bogged down by these shoulds. And so, I really, really try to emphasize that where you're at and who you are and how you are is okay. And that, you don't like having this sense of purpose or having whatever it is that you think you should be doing or where you should be, that doesn't determine whether or not you're a good person. And I think that can be like underneath it of like, oh my gosh, if I'm not where I think I should be, then that must mean I'm failing and I'm just terrible or whatever. And just reminding people that, that's not what determines your worth. That's not what determines whether or not you're a good person. It's how you treat people. And, that's what determines whether you're a good person and how things like that. Um, so just reminding people of those simple things of like, you know, I like to start there with just taking the pressure off and letting people know that they're okay where they're at. And then that can be the starting ground for what next step do I want to take? What next step do you want to take? And just sort of exploring from there.
Do you have an idea of where or how we acquire these shoulds? Because I feel like so many of us live with them, and I'm not sure if we understand where they maybe come from or how we acquire them over time.
Yeah, that's a good question because I think it's yeah, like because where does it come? Everyone feels it. Everyone has that sense of should, but who started it? And so I think it's almost like this collective agreement kind of that like, oh, well, this is where we all should be. And I mean, maybe some of it stems from like developmental stages, of like what's healthy and appropriate developmentally, but then that gets twisted into like this, like, well, you should or shouldn't do this. Um, like, it, I'll just use an example of like potty training. If you're, a healthy individual and haven't potty trained when you're 12 years old, that's a developmental difference, but that's not like that doesn't have to do with like what you should or shouldn't be doing with your life. You know what I mean? So, so I think these developmental phases have gotten like twisted into like, I don't know, external things. And I don't know, that's just like off the cuff what's coming to my mind right now. But, and, and then I think seeing, getting stuck in comparison and getting stuck in worrying about what other people think. I think those are two big parts of it too. Um, so yeah.
I love that. And drop for those of you who are on this call and you really understand the feeling of shoulding on yourself, drop 222 in the chat because I can relate to that as well. I understand what it's like to feel like I should be elsewhere, or I should have said something different, or I should have tried harder, or even little things. Like I know in my heart of hearts that I operate best off of like 8.5 to 9 hours of sleep. But there will be some times when I'm in a heavier season, or it usually happens when I'm not getting enough sleep, and then the shoulds come in, where I'm like, oh, I should have woken up earlier. I should have worked harder. And I'm like, no, babe, you're exhausted. Like what you should do is go to bed, take a nap, take care of yourself, not judge yourself, not pressure yourself. So I feel like it's a lot of expectations, and I also feel like it can just be a lot of societal conversations as well, because at least in America, I feel like we're given from a young age a very small scope of what our human experience can look like. You go to school, you go to college, maybe you get married, you have the home, you have the children, and that's kind of the whole thing. And I think a lot of timelines are starting to shift where people are doing a lot of that later on or deciding, you know what, maybe none of that was for me in general, or I did that and I didn't like it. So now what do I do? And I feel like I'm back at point zero. So you were talking about helping people start to just appreciate where they're at in this journey and helping them let go of all these expectations, let go of all these shoulds, and just be present. Are there specific tools that you use to support someone who is looking to connect with their purpose and maybe more to the present?
Yeah. So before I get into that, I also just want to add that oftentimes, the most interesting people have not followed the society's shoulds. I mean, there are yes, definitely people who've gotten all the degrees and have all the letters behind their names, and they're fascinating people too because of everything that they've learned and done. But there are people who've just like gone these really unconventional paths and you know definitely not like what they should be doing, but it's like they've made these incredible contributions to the world. I mean, for example, this is a total tangent. I just finished Jim Henson's biography, which was like 500 pages. And I mean, the man developed puppets. Like, talk about not something that that's not a conventional path of like playing with puppets your whole life. But I am a huge Muppet fan, and I will like tear up when I think about the contribution of the Muppets to this world and like just how special that is and something that we take for granted of like just the existence of Muppets. And so if he had followed a conventional path and followed the shoulds, we might not have Kermit the Frog and the Rainbow Connection and Sesame Street and all of these things. So Anyway, that was a tangent, but I felt
Such
like
a
a
good
necessary one.
tangent. I've got
Yeah.
chills right now.
Yeah. But to answer your question, so tools, as a mindfulness teacher, meditation and mindfulness is one of the biggest tools that I recommend because that is a practice in experiencing the present moment. And the more we can experience the present moment, the more we are experiencing our humanness. And we're also giving ourselves space to, like, in that space, sometimes inspiration arises and insights about what we want and don't want, or like just things about ourselves and our lives might come up. But at the very least, it's just that's like the deepest and most direct way to really experience our humanness. And that can come out in mindfulness. So mindfulness is a way of, it's a type of meditation. It's also a way of living life. And so we can practice mindfulness in lots of other ways besides just meditation. And one of the ways is being mindful of our language, and our internal language and our external language. And that word should is a big one that can be going through our minds. And so if we, like, I've eliminated that word, virtually eliminated the word should from my vocabulary. But it takes work and presence to be aware of when it flies out of our mouth, and then what do we want to say instead, and like what do we really mean, because like, oh, I should make the bed. Well, why? And so what do I want to say instead? Oftentimes the knee-jerk reaction is I need to make the bed, which is just a surrogate for should. But then, okay, so if I take those two words out of it, then what do I really mean? Well, you know, I'll be really glad if I make the bed when I get into bed later and it's all like nice and clean, and when I walk through my room and I see a nice clean bed. So it'll make me happy. It'll benefit me if I make the bet. So just like paying attention to our language can really start to like make us more aware of a lot in our lives. And so that's just one like really minor example, but there are bigger ways too. But I think a lot of times the little things can be the big things.
Everything is everything. Everything is
Yes.
everything. The way you
Yes.
do one thing is the way that you do everything. And it is
Yes.
the reminder. It's so interesting because we do all have this voice inside of us that seems very small, but it determines the way that we feel about ourselves. It determines the opportunities that we choose to see for ourselves, the conversations that we choose to start up, the people that we try to befriend. There's this inner dialogue that feels very small, but determines the bigness of our lives, or maybe the way that we shrivel up in fear of different possibilities and things that we think that we should do. And I love that you talked about mindfulness specifically in regards to noticing that voice, because that voice can be very elusive. It's there and you kind of hear it, but then it's gone. And it's like, what just happened? And it really is one of those things that is so important to begin to understand, because once you can free yourself from that mind chatter that
Yeah.
is telling you that you're not good enough and you're not doing enough and you're not worth much and you're not worthy of love and you don't love yourself, and why did you say that to someone and why didn't you say that to someone? It's so much energy every
Yeah.
single
Yeah.
second of every
Yeah.
single day. So does meditation help us get more in tune with that inner voice on top of mindfulness?
Yeah, I think so. I think when we first start out, the chatter is going to be loud. But the more we can sit in meditation, it can start to settle. And then you can, because I think of the chatter as like, it's like a ticker tape that's just always going. And then behind all the noise is like the gentle, quiet voice of truth, of your heart, your soul, whatever you want to call it. That's like trying to get our attention, but it's such a gentle, soft voice because truth doesn't need to scream. Truth just is. It's all the other stuff that's trying to scream to get our attention of the shoulds. And I like to think of it like it's being in a room where the TV is turned on full blast. And when we can walk into the other room, the TV is still on, you can still hear it, but it's not in your face, and you can start to hear, you might be in the other room and you might start to hear the hum of the refrigerator in the next room because you don't have the TV blaring, So that's how I think of meditation. You might not hear the refrigerator humming if you're standing in front of the TV that's full blast, but if you go into the other room, you might hear it. So that's, yeah, so it's like once we can kind of sit for a while and allow the chatter to kind of chatter itself out, it'll still be there, but it's in the other room. And then we can start to hear the gentle whisper start to kind of reveal itself.
I feel like if we distilled this conversation down, the purpose, according to you, Julia, who has done so much and is one of our guides who can help people, is to be present and to be here and to understand truth in an uninhibited way, in a very real, raw way. And meditation and mindfulness can be great tools for that. So I'm curious, with the few minutes that we have left in this session, are you open to taking us through a meditation to help us connect with this a little bit more?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we can just start with wherever you're at. You can just allow your eyes to gently close if that feels comfortable. If you're not comfortable with your eyes closed, you can just keep them softly opened, with a relaxed, soft gaze, just not staring at any one thing particular. And then you can just let yourself breathe naturally and settle, transition into this new moment, and just be here for just a moment and experience your body wherever it is doing whatever it's doing. And we can start to gently shift our focus to our feet and bringing the attention into our feet. If your feet are touching the ground or the floor, you can notice the sensation of the point of contact with the bottom of your feet on the floor. If they're not on the floor, you can just notice wherever any points of contact of your feet meeting the surface that they're touching. And just exploring that sensation. What are the feet experiencing right now? And you might notice maybe there's some sort of temperature, it's warm or it's cool, or some sort of texture. Might start to feel almost tingly, or maybe it's numb or tense, or you might not notice anything at all, and that's okay. You can just notice, be aware of that, be aware of the not noticing. And just noticing without judgment, not if it's hot or it's cold or there's tension or not. It's not good or bad. It just is. It's just what's being experienced right now. And just really explore any and all sensations in the feet. And now we can gently shift our attention to our seat and our sit bones and where our body is making contact with the surface that we're sitting on. The buttocks, the back of the legs, tailbone, whatever it is that you notice in the seat, points of contact. Maybe it's soft, maybe it's hard. Again, maybe there's some sort of texture or temperature. Just exploring the sensations, the physical sensations. And your mind might start to wander The chatter might get loud and it might distract you, and that's totally normal. It's part of the process. You just notice that that's happened and then bring the attention back to our focal point, which is the seat. And now we are going to shift our attention to our breath. And specifically, this time we'll focus on the nostrils and the air moving in and out of our nose as we breathe. And you don't have to breathe any particular type of way. Your body knows how to breathe, so you can just let it and just notice it. And the air might be cool or warm. Maybe it tickles, maybe it's dry, maybe there's moisture. You might even notice smells as you focus on the nostrils, and those smells might bring thoughts up. And so you can just notice all of that happening, the thoughts, the smells, if there are any, the sensations, and then always bring it back to the sensations. And then for the next maybe minute, we can continue to focus on any of those focal points, whatever felt most natural for your attention, the feet, the seat, or the breath. And that will be your focal point for the next maybe minute or a little bit less. And when the mind wanders, just bring it back to that focal point. And then whenever you're ready, you can just open your eyes and bring your attention back to the screen. If it helps to orient yourself to look around the room or to stretch or move, do what you need to do to be back here with us.
That was so lovely. As we come to the end of the session and as people are coming back from their meditation and their mindfulness, I'm curious if you have any final words that you'd like to share and maybe it's all the same thing. What can someone take away from the work that we've just done now in the meditation?
I mean, my parting words would always be there's nothing wrong with you. So just take that with you always. There's nothing wrong with you, period. Um, and then just always come back to the moment. You can always begin again. That's what another one of the many things that meditation can teach you is that you can always begin again. There's always, and the breath is a good way because there's always a new breath. So if the mind wanders, you can begin again. If your life has gotten off track, you can begin again. And there's nothing wrong with you.
So beautiful. Thank you so much for today's session, Julia. I
Thank
just
you.
dropped Julia's Life Guides link in the chat. All of you are partnered with Life Guides in some way, whether you go to school with an organization that's partnered or you work with an organization that's partnered, but you have access to Life Guides. So I just dropped Julia's profile in the chat. You can schedule a private call with her. And a lot of the reason why maybe we feel like we're not acting on our purpose is because we know where we're at and we know where we want to go, but we just don't know how to get there. And a lot of the times it is that present moment and the mindfulness that helps us get there. So Julia will be a great support for you on that journey. We have these group sessions which happen every Monday for Motivational Monday, hopefully getting you introduced to a guide that you love who can take you on your journey. That will lead into the private sessions where someone gets to custom help you navigate your beautiful life and help it be as big and beautiful and robust as you are meant for it to be in your heart of hearts, not necessarily that it should be based on the expectations of others. And then on our Life Guides website, you'll see that there's a button on the top that says Life Guides Learning Hub, and you can find tools, resources, calendars, and a bunch more information there. Next week, we have Priscilla. You all have seen her before, and we're going to be talking about before you find your purpose, find yourself. So I'm so excited to see you all next week. I hope that this plants some seeds for your week moving forward, and that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, maybe you're finding a little bit more mindfulness in each moment. There is a survey that pops up at the end. Please fill it out, leave any love letters, let us know how today's session was. I read them every single Monday. And thank you so much, Julia, for being here. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Bye.